Then comes the second sorrow of Frigg, when Odin goes to fight the wolf, and Frey goes to fight the giant Surt. Then Odin, Frigg's husband, will fall to Fenrir. Yeah, that's it for that.
Yeah, that is, that's a short 8 verses to describe the death of Odin. I'll start with this being Frigg's second sorrow. So the first is the death of Balder, which we already have covered. And now Odin is about to die. Frigg, I don't think we've talked about a whole heck of a lot, actually. We touched on her
A little bit, but no, not a lot.
Yeah, the last episode we did. And so, I mean, she's Odin's wife. She's the mother of Balder. She is, by all accounts, the archetypal example of the matriarch of society,
For
right?
sure.
And she has to go through a lot. And I mean, that has to mirror, you know, the horrors and hardships that mothers everywhere have to go through, you know, with, you know, even one example is boys and men going off to war. I mean, this is literally Balder is a little different. Although, I mean, I guess the idea with Balder is that, you know, men are disproportionately, like ridiculously disproportionately the victims of homicidal violence.
For
right?
sure.
You know, them acting it out as well as being on the receiving end, right? And then, so I mean, there's that. Balder is sort of that side of it. And then there's, you know, her husband going off to war and he does not come back. I mean, that's huge. That's like, the burdens of death and war are not just felt by the people in it, participating in it, but it's the families outside of it, waiting at home. It's, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Frigg here this is, the death of Odin is like the most serious thing. One detail I think that is most, okay, I'll step back here a little bit. Odin goes into this intentionally. Odin, it's not like he is resigning himself to this, that, like he's not running around scared, anything like that. He's facing death head on. He knows this is coming now based on he's talking with the seeress about this. He knows this is coming, but he still goes head on into it. We're going to talk about a lot of the sacrifices of Odin, a lot of the things he has done for wisdom, for knowledge, for ensuring that everything is in place for this moment, for Ragnarok. But he is still going to die. He is still going to pay the ultimate price. He's going up against Fenrir. So this is the other side of it. So there's Surtur and Hrym, and there's this sort of naturalistic elements, but then Fenrir is the one who ends up doing in Odin. Fenrir is the one, it's not Surtur. Surtur, yeah, that's in this standa. Frey goes to fight the giants. Frey dies as well. We haven't really met Freyr. He's a good guy. Odin, this example of sacrifice, of building something up that is going to last the test of time. Odin, the person who has created the world, the one who has created something with his hands, something that is being built up, and he makes sacrifices to maintain that. He gets destroyed by Fenrir. It's not by fire, it's not by natural disaster, it's by this carnivorous nature that is going to eat culture from the outside. Like there's a distinction there that I think is just almost mind-boggling, because to me it makes sense. I don't think I'm getting it out right, that for it to be Fenrir that Odin faces and eventually gets killed by, it's perfect. It's like, this is the force that is going directly against culture. yeah, it's like a force that is aggressively against culture. And Odin ends up paying the price at the end. He does not survive Ragnarok. He knows he does not survive Ragnarok, and yet he still goes in head on in order to defeat this force that is coming to destroy what he has built. Something like that. This is... No, the Death of Odin is a huge, huge moment, and the culmination of so much. We're going to see what Odin does building up to this in story after story after story. And now it's done. He dies. You want to take over?
For sure. Yeah, just to sort of second what you're saying, like Fenrir is the... Well, we've got the natural disasters. But then we have Fenrir who, if you recall, has a lot of resentment and malevolence in his heart. And that's why he is, when he's let loose, he's destroying everything he can. He is disorder. And Odin is the one who orders. And that's really the distinction, is that you have the most primordial form of disorder going up against the most primordial form of order. And in this case, disorder wins.
Yeah, I like that terminology. I think that's a good representation of what I was trying to say.
Well, I got to listen to you and then sort of figure it out in my own head. So something else I'd like to talk about, just a quick part, is Frey fighting Surt. Frey is a god of fertility and prosperity and the natural world. So you would honor Frey, before harvest and when you're planting and all that kind of stuff. And you have him going to fight the fire giant, who I've already sort of given the image of him wiping out, the landscape. And I think that's why you have Frey fighting Surt, is that Surt is destroying nature and the prosperity and the fertility of the land, as lava and fire does. And that's why Frey fights him and ultimately loses. And they don't get into it here, but there's a story about Frey actually had a sword that would kill Surt, but he gave it up so that he could meet a lady. Good old Frey.
That's a good story.
It is a good story, and we'll cover that.
Well, coming up pretty quick, actually. Yeah. So, a few episodes from now. No, I'll second what you're talking about with Freyr here. It's absolutely... I think that makes even more sense. Like, it makes more intuitive sense that Frey would fight Surtur. It's like these natural disasters, these natural occurrences are directly opposed to the fertility of the land. Like, that's going back to many, many, many religions were originally agricultural cults, fertility cults, and it was all based on the idea of Mother Earth. And Frey is, eventually the embodiment of that concept of fertility. Well, I mean, literally, there's an idea that, a man fertilizing a woman, to get all clinical or whatnot, is the same thing as rain coming down and falling upon the earth and fertilizing seeds and whatnot. So, I mean, it's the Frey is sort of one half of the fertility cycle. It's like he is the one that provides the seed, and he's got most representations of Frey have a big penis on him.
Yes. Very phallic. Very phallic. And
it's the destruction of fertility, prosperity. That's what this is. That makes sense. And then I think that puts into a different light, or provides a contrast to what's going on with Odin versus Fenrir. It is again like that. the ordering of the world, which is the building of culture, which I think we got into a little bit, how the Aesir, the tribe of the Aesir, lies at least in not active opposition to the Vanir, but certainly in contrast to the Vanir, which Frey is a member of the Vanir tribe, which is more natural and possibly more of that original agricultural fertility cult, versus the Aesir is fully into culture, the development of culture. And that's Odin, as far as I'm concerned. Odin is the embodiment of that. He is the one who has built that up. He represents, the good king. That's actually something archetypally here. Every king eventually becomes the obsolete king. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting here. Archetypally, in other stories, you've got the old king that eventually has to die and whatnot. A really good example of this is the Egyptian. It's not necessarily just their creation story, but their story of kind of this cycle. The old king dies, and Odin is certainly the old king here, but an aspect of it's Osiris, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Osiris is the old king, and an aspect of Osiris is that he is willfully blind. And I can't make that connection here because Odin does everything to see what is happening.
Yes.
So it's a weird place in archetypal understanding, because he is the old king who is dying here, and he doesn't come back. Osiris comes back. Mm-hmm. Odin doesn't come back.
Odin doesn't come back. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
This isn't like the comic books where the characters who die come back, a few months later. No, he's just done.
He's just done. Yeah, he even though that's going to happen, he is coming in with eyes wide open, or eye
wide open.
So I mean, okay, so the loss of his one eye, I can get to how symbolically that could be getting at the concept of willful blindness. I can get to it. Maybe it's something like he's got one eye on the unknown, so he's got one less eye on what's happening right now. Something like he's got one less eye on the present, mm-hmm. because he's got it kind of outside of it looking for knowledge. I can get there. But the purpose of all of that is to fend off what is happening here. That's not explicit in this stanza. I don't think that's really explicit anywhere, but it is what he wants to know about. Like, Ragnarok is what he is asking this seeress about. He wants to know about it. He wants to know these dark things. He wants to learn about it. I don't think he's going in blind.
No, I don't think he's going in blindly. I think he's going in willingly. And I think that's just like we talked about with Balder, who had resigned himself to the fate. Odin understands what is going to happen, the necessity of it, and it's the idea that when you're faced with chaos and disorder, if you go in willingly to face it, you can grow. Because if you go in unwillingly, you might be able to kind of patch it up or band-aid solution the disorder. But if you go in willingly, it will ultimately destroy you, because the you that comes out of it after is not the same you that went into it. So there is a death, a metaphorical, not even metaphorical. It changes you as a person, no matter what chaos you go in. But if you go in willingly, as Odin does here, then the change can happen, and the most growth and the most benefit from it can happen. And we'll see exactly what that means in a few stanzas, what that ultimate growth is.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, it's hard that it's sort of it goes against the archetypes that we have kind of gleaned from the set of historical stories here. It's not like I use those as they are infallible symbols here. There's different aspects everywhere here, but I don't. What I like here is that it's going against the archetypal idea of the willfully blind king who gets destroyed because of what he ignores. I think it's the opposite of that. He gets destroyed despite knowing everything possible that it would take to prevent it, to survive it. I think that's maybe even more so what he's actually looking for, is like, how do I prevent Ragnarok? How do I survive Ragnarok? And there is no answer. And that speaks to some kind of mortality, something like, no matter what you do, you will die. Oh, I'm being just so cheery. But that's a. When you realize that, though, I think that comes with a responsibility to do all you can with your life, to build what you can, to sacrifice everything necessary to create something that is going to survive what kills you. And the example of Odin charging head on into what he knows is going to kill him. Yeah, it's there's a reason Odin is at the top of the hierarchy of the gods. I think in the first episode we touched on a little bit of Marduk. I think so. I think we talked about Marduk a little bit, but maybe to get more into that is that, Marduk was the one who was able and willing to face off with the greatest monsters that were being sent by Tiamat, this who we made a parallel to Ymir there, based on his willingness to subdue chaos, subdue these monsters. His price was being the top of the pantheon of having that power. And I mean, Odin literally shapes the world after defeating Ymir in some sort of similar respect, right? And so, yeah, bottom line, it's like Odin is the top example at the top of the dominance hierarchy who faces that which is going to kill him eyes wide open. That is like the biggest takeaway I get from this verse.
I agree. And it just occurred to me that in the Voluspa, we saw that Odin breathed life and spirit into humans. And I think that it shows that we have that capability as well, that essence to be able to face things head on and eyes wide open. And yeah, we're going to get eaten by the wolf, but something good can come from it if we look beyond ourselves.
I love that. I'm getting chills right now.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
The connections are quite something.
This is like maybe I'll end off what I wanted to say here with just an emphasis of in the Larrington translation. It's specifically that Odin advances to fight the wolf. Odin advances. I want to underscore that he is the one taking it to the wolf. The wolf might be knocking down on his door, but he's the one who gets him in the end. He goes in. It's his choice. I don't know. I don't think I have much more here, even though.
No, I think that about covers at least the extent of like my ability to make connections and knowledge of it. But it's a powerful stanza.
Powerful, but sad. It begins with it's Frigg's second sorrow. Like I said, it was done. No, it's it begins with that. This is not a happy, triumphant thing. Odin is still dead, and that's the world is worse off. for that. I think something like
At least
that.
for now.
For now.
At least for now.